90% of people with early kidney disease have absolutely no idea they have it. No pain, no symptoms, nothing unusual at all. And the cruelest part? Many of them are people who take their blood pressure medication perfectly, every single morning, without missing a single dose. The very medication protecting their heart, quietly pushing their kidneys toward failure. That's not a scare tactic. That's what the research actually says. And it's something your doctor almost certainly hasn't had time to explain to you in a 10-minute checkup. I'm Dr. James Cross, and in the next few minutes I'm going to show you exactly which medications are involved, why this happens, and, most importantly, the one simple question that could protect you starting today. Watch till the end. This one matters. Most people past the age of 60 have absolutely no idea that some of the very medications keeping their blood pressure under control are, at this very moment, quietly nudging their kidneys toward a slow and irreversible decline. And the most unsettling part? There are zero warning signs, no discomfort, no signal, nothing that tells you anything is off, until a routine blood test one ordinary afternoon changes the entire conversation. So here's the question worth sitting with right now. How long has this already been happening inside your body? If you're committed to taking your health seriously, really seriously, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I share straightforward, practical health information designed specifically for adults over 60 who want to stay informed and ahead of the curve. And drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from. I genuinely love hearing from each of you. Now let's get into it. Every single morning, it happens without thought. You reach for that small pill sitting on the counter, you swallow it with a sip of water, you move on, make coffee, get dressed, start your day. No hesitation, no second thought, because you've been doing this for years, possibly a decade or more, and it is working. Your blood pressure is stable, your doctor is satisfied. The numbers in your chart look exactly the way they're supposed to look. And that is precisely what makes this conversation so urgent, because fine and fully informed are not the same thing, not even close. I'm Dr. James Cross. And what I want to talk about today is something that rarely finds its way into a standard 10-minute doctor's appointment. Not because your physician doesn't care about you, they do, but because modern medicine, by design, is built to address the problem directly in front of it. Lower the pressure, protect the heart, prevent the stroke. All of that is right. All of that is necessary. All of that saves lives. But here's what doesn't get said often enough, especially to adults who have crossed the threshold of 60. Every medication that helps one system in your body quietly asks something of the rest of it. And when it comes to certain blood pressure medications, what they are slowly and silently asking of your kidneys, over months, over years, is something most people never find out about until a routine lab result tells a story no one was prepared to hear. Here is what the research tells us. According to studies in nephrology literature, kidney filtration capacity begins declining gradually after age 40, at roughly 1% per year in otherwise healthy adults. By the time you reach your 60s or 70s, that process is already well underway, quietly, completely without symptoms, without a single moment where your body waves a flag and says, "Hey, pay attention here." Now layer something on top of that. You're also taking one, possibly 2 or even 3 blood pressure medications, taken faithfully, taken correctly, taken with complete trust in the system that prescribed them. And yet, for reasons most patients are never told, certain combinations of these medications can quietly accelerate what is already happening inside those kidneys. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, cumulatively, in a way that only becomes visible when enough function has already been lost. When the evidence finally shows up somewhere a doctor happens to look. That is what today is about. I'm going to walk you through 3 specific categories of blood pressure medications that deserve a far closer look than they typically receive, not because any of them are inherently dangerous on their own, not because you should stop taking them without speaking to your doctor first, but because awareness, real, grounded, informed awareness, is the only tool available to protect yourself from a problem that comes with absolutely no early warning system. Your kidneys don't send pain signals when they are under pressure. They don't send any signals at all. They adapt. They compensate. They quietly do everything possible to keep up, until one day, quietly, they can't. And by the time that day arrives, the conversation has already changed into something much harder to reverse. Let me ask you something honest. When you genuinely think about your health, when you lie awake at night turning something over in your mind, which organs come to mind first? Your heart probably, maybe your lungs, your brain. And that makes sense because those organs have a way of announcing themselves. Your heart races when anxiety hits. Your lungs remind you they exist every time you climb a flight of stairs too quickly. Your brain introduces itself with a headache. But your kidneys say nothing. They have never once interrupted your day to ask for your attention. And that silence, that complete, unbroken, permanent silence, is exactly what makes them the most overlooked and most vulnerable organ in this entire conversation. Here is what is happening inside your body right now, at this exact moment, while you're reading or listening to this. Your kidneys are filtering your entire blood supply, every drop of it, roughly every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without rest, without breaks, without asking for even a moment of your attention. They regulate your fluid balance. They keep your electrolytes in precise equilibrium. They extract waste products that, if left to accumulate, would poison you within days. They even play a quiet but critical role in regulating your blood pressure, which makes everything I'm about to tell you particularly relevant. These are not passive organs sitting there doing simple work. They are precision instruments operating inside extraordinarily fine margins. And like any precision instrument pushed past those margins, they have limits that most people never think about until those limits have already been reached. Now here is the piece that tends to genuinely stop people when they hear it for the first time. Chronic kidney disease, the kind that develops slowly over years, progresses without any noticeable symptoms during its earliest and most treatable stages. According to the National Kidney Foundation, approximately 90% of people with early-stage kidney disease have no idea they have it. 90%. Not because they were careless, not because they skipped doctor's appointments, but because there were genuinely no warning signs to notice, respond to, or act on. No pain, no visible changes, no single moment that stood up and said, "Something is wrong, look here." Just silence. The same silence your kidneys have always operated in. And this is what separates kidney health from nearly every other health concern you'll face after 60. With most conditions, your body eventually signals distress in some form. Something aches, something shifts, something pushes you toward a doctor's office, or at minimum toward a conversation. With kidney decline, especially the kind that develops gradually under the influence of long-term medication use, the signal often arrives late. After function has already been meaningfully reduced. After the window for early, effective intervention has quietly closed. There is a phrase I keep coming back to when I have this conversation. Silence is not the same as safety. Your kidneys could be under consistent compounding strain right now, today, this morning, and you would feel absolutely nothing different from any other ordinary day. That's not meant to alarm you into paralysis. It is meant to fundamentally shift how you think about monitoring your own health. Because the people who successfully protect their kidney function are not the ones who waited for symptoms to arrive. They're the ones who understood early enough that, with this particular organ, by the time you feel something, you're already behind. So now you understand what your kidneys are truly doing every minute of every day. Quietly filtering, quietly balancing, quietly keeping you alive in ways you never think about, until something disrupts that quiet. And the first disruption I want to walk you through comes from one of the most commonly prescribed medications for blood pressure in adults over 60. Diuretics. You may know them better as water pills. If you are currently taking one, you are in very large company. Diuretics are among the most widely prescribed blood pressure medications in the entire world, and for genuinely good reasons. They work. They have decades of proven effectiveness behind them. They lower blood pressure reliably by reducing the volume of fluid in your circulatory system. But here is what the prescription label doesn't explain. What the pharmacy handout glosses over. What rarely comes up in a 10-minute follow-up appointment. When a diuretic enters your system, it sends a direct instruction to your kidneys. Release fluid, push it out, reduce the volume in the system, and your kidneys comply. Because responding to exactly that kind of instruction is precisely what they were built to do. Urine output increases, fluid levels drop, blood pressure follows. It seems simple, clean, logical. Except for something that a significant number of older adults are never told. Your kidneys don't passively release that fluid. They work to do it. Every time a diuretic triggers that fluid release process, your kidneys are not resting or running on autopilot. They are being actively driven to perform at an elevated level, pulling fluid from the blood and pushing it out through the urinary system. It takes effort, real cellular effort, the kind that accumulates over time. Now add this into the equation. A meaningful percentage of adults over 65 are already experiencing mild to moderate dehydration on a regular basis. Not because they're being careless with their water intake, but because the body's thirst signaling mechanism genuinely weakens with age. Research published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition has confirmed that older adults consistently underestimate how much fluid their bodies actually need and regularly consume less water than their physiology requires to function optimally. So here is the picture that emerges for many seniors on diuretics. And it's a picture that almost nobody has ever drawn for them clearly. The medication is instructing the kidneys to release fluid. The body is already running low on fluid it can afford to lose. And the kidneys, reliable, efficient, silent, comply with the instruction anyway, because that's what they do. They don't check whether the reservoir is full before following the order. Think of it like this. Imagine a water pump built to run continuously and efficiently. It performs perfectly when the reservoir behind it is full and replenished regularly. But slowly, without anyone noticing, the water level begins to drop. Nobody refills it. The pump keeps running, pulling harder, pushing faster, doing exactly what it was engineered to do. That pump doesn't shut itself off. It doesn't trigger an alarm. It simply wears down, quietly, until the wear becomes damage. That is what chronic low-grade dehydration, combined with long-term diuretic use, can slowly do to kidney tissue across months and years of daily medication. And here's the detail that makes this especially relevant to adults over 60 specifically. As kidneys age, their ability to concentrate urine and conserve water becomes measurably less efficient. This means that an older kidney loses more fluid per filtration cycle than a younger kidney would under the same medication dose. The margin for error shrinks. The workload stays exactly the same. A review published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society noted that diuretic-related kidney stress is significantly underdiagnosed in older adults, largely because the early indicators, subtle shifts in creatinine levels, are rarely flagged unless someone is specifically and intentionally looking for them. And most of the time, nobody is looking, not out of negligence but because the blood pressure is controlled. The medication appears to be doing its job. On the surface, everything looks exactly as expected. But fine on the surface and fine underneath are two entirely different things. And with diuretics, what's happening beneath that surface deserves far more attention than most people have ever given it. We've established what diuretics are doing beneath the surface. The fluid drain, the hidden dehydration, the kidneys working harder than anyone realizes, silently, without a single complaint. If the conversation stopped here, that alone would be worth your full attention. But it doesn't stop here. The second medication on this list operates through a completely different mechanism, which means it creates a completely different kind of risk, one that is, in many ways, harder to detect and in some cases harder to reverse. ACE inhibitors. If you are over 60 and managing blood pressure, there's a very real chance this class of medication is already part of your daily routine. ACE inhibitors are among the most prescribed cardiovascular medications in the world. They work by relaxing blood vessel walls, reducing strain on the heart, and lowering pressure throughout the entire circulatory system. Again, effective. Again, widely trusted. Again, prescribed for legitimate and important reasons. But here is where the story gets more complicated. Your kidneys don't just passively receive blood flowing through them. They actively regulate the pressure of the blood moving through their filtration units with extraordinary precision, because filtration only works within a very specific pressure range. Too high, and the delicate vessels inside the kidney sustain damage over time. Too low, and filtration becomes sluggish. Waste remains in the blood longer. The kidney compensates by working harder. The strain accumulates. ACE inhibitors reduce pressure throughout the body, including inside the delicate filtration vessels of the kidney itself. For most people, the body adjusts. The kidneys find a new equilibrium and stabilize there. But there is a variable that changes this entire calculation for a meaningful percentage of older adults. It's called renal artery stenosis. It simply means a narrowing of the arteries responsible for delivering blood directly to the kidneys. You would never feel it. There is no symptom, no signal, nothing to notice. but it affects a significant portion of adults over 60 with underlying cardiovascular disease. Estimates in nephrology literature suggest prevalence rates between 7 and 20% in this population, depending on individual risk factors. Now consider what happens in that scenario. Blood flow to the kidney is already restricted due to arterial narrowing. An ACE inhibitor then further reduces the pressure driving that blood flow into the kidney. The organ, already working with a compromised blood supply, now receives even less. A review published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that in patients with undiagnosed renal artery stenosis, ACE inhibitor use could lead to measurable, clinically significant declines in kidney filtration within weeks to months of starting treatment, not years, weeks to months. And because there are no symptoms in early kidney decline, most people in this situation continue taking their medication exactly as prescribed. Their blood pressure numbers look controlled. Nobody connects the dots. The kidneys adapt and compensate until the compensation starts showing up in a lab result that finally makes someone look more carefully. That is the pressure shift problem. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a quiet recalibration inside an organ that will never once send you a message about what it's experiencing. We've now covered 2 medications, 2 separate mechanisms, 2 distinct ways that commonly prescribed blood pressure treatments can quietly place compounding stress on kidney function over time. If the story ended there, it would already be more than worth your full attention. But it doesn't end there. Because the third element in this conversation isn't a blood pressure medication at all. It's something far more ordinary than that. Something sitting in medicine cabinets in homes across the country right now. Something millions of older adults reach for without a second thought. Because it's available without a prescription, it's been around for decades, and nobody ever framed it as part of a larger medical concern. Pain relievers. Specifically, a class of medications called NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Ibuprofen, naproxen, the kind of relief people reach for after a long day on their feet, after a flare-up in an arthritic knee, after waking up with a stiff lower back, or the kind of joint discomfort that simply becomes a familiar part of life after 60. And here is the critical point that most people have never once considered. Used occasionally by a younger, healthy adult with no other medications in the picture, NSAIDs are generally manageable. The body processes them. The kidneys handle them without significant issue. Life continues normally. But that is not the situation we are describing here. We are describing an adult over 60 who is already taking a diuretic, kidneys already working harder, fluid balance already reduced, possibly also on an ACE inhibitor, the delicate pressure balance inside the kidney's filtration system already altered, and now, on top of all of that, a routine dose of ibuprofen for a sore knee after working in the garden. Here is what that NSAID is doing inside the kidney at that moment. NSAIDs work by blocking specific chemical signals in the body called prostaglandins. These compounds serve many purposes, including regulating inflammation. But inside the kidney, prostaglandins play a very specific and critically important role. They help dilate the small blood vessels supplying the kidney's filtration units, maintaining adequate blood flow even when the body is under stress or in a reduced fluid state. Block those prostaglandins, and those vessels constrict. Blood flow into the kidney drops. And now, for the first time in this conversation, all 3 effects are present simultaneously. Fluid levels, already reduced by the diuretic. Internal filtration pressure, already altered by the ACE inhibitor. Blood flow into the kidney, now further restricted by the NSAID. 3 separate medications, 3 separate mechanisms, 3 separate disruptions, all converging on the same organ, at the same time, on the same day that someone just wanted relief from a sore knee. Research published in the British Medical Journal identified this specific combination, diuretics, ACE inhibitors or similar agents, and NSAIDs, as a pattern associated with significantly elevated risk of acute kidney injury. Some researchers in nephrology literature have informally referred to this pattern as the triple whammy effect, and the term captures it precisely. Not one impact. 3, landing on the same target in rapid succession. And the reason this catches so many people completely off guard is straightforward. Nobody prescribed the ibuprofen. Nobody reviewed it against the existing medications. Nobody considered it a clinical decision because it didn't require a prescription. It was just something for the pain. An ordinary, reasonable response to ordinary, familiar discomfort. But inside the kidney, it was the third weight on a scale that was already tipping. A study in the American Journal of Kidney Diseases found that NSAID use in older adults with existing cardiovascular medication regimens was associated with a substantially higher rate of kidney function decline compared to those not using them. Substantially higher from something most people don't even think of as a real medication in the clinical sense. That is the part of this story that should change how you look at everything in your medicine cabinet, not just what was prescribed, everything. So now you have all three pieces assembled. A diuretic, quietly draining fluid reserves the body can barely afford to lose. An ACE inhibitor, shifting the delicate pressure balance that kidney filtration depends on. An NSAID, restricting the blood flow that keeps the entire filtration system functional. Three separate medications, three separate pathways, and here is where the real story crystallizes. Because the danger was never about any single one of them. It was always about what happens when all three converge inside the same organ at the same time, day after day, week after week. Think of it this way. Imagine a bridge that has been engineered to carry a specific maximum load. One vehicle crosses, no problem. Two vehicles simultaneously, still within tolerance. But place three heavy vehicles on the same structural point at once, and the calculation changes completely. Not because any single vehicle was too heavy on its own, but because the structure beneath them was never designed to absorb all three simultaneously. Your kidneys are that bridge, and right now, for a significant number of adults over 60, all three vehicles are crossing at the same time, every single day, while nobody is monitoring the total weight. Research published in the British Medical Journal examined the combined use of diuretics, ACE inhibitors or similar agents, and NSAIDs in older adult populations. The findings were striking. Patients using all three simultaneously faced a dramatically elevated risk of acute kidney injury compared to those using one or two of these medications. Not a marginal increase, a dramatic one. And acute kidney injury, even a single episode, doesn't always resolve cleanly. Studies in nephrology literature have demonstrated that even one episode of acute kidney injury can accelerate the longer trajectory toward chronic kidney disease, permanently reducing the functional ceiling those kidneys can reach going forward. One episode, lasting consequences. But here is what makes the combination effect particularly difficult to catch in time. Each medication was prescribed by someone with genuinely good intentions. Each clinical decision made complete sense in isolation. The blood pressure needed managing. The fluid retention needed addressing. The pain needed relief. Nobody was wrong, but nobody was seeing the full picture either. This is what physicians sometimes call the problem of fragmented care, where multiple providers, multiple prescriptions, and multiple decisions exist in separate conversations that never quite meet in the same room. And in the gap between those conversations, the kidneys carry the weight of everything that went uncoordinated, silently, consistently, without a single complaint, until a creatinine level rises slightly on a routine lab panel, or until an eGFR number dips below a threshold that finally makes someone stop and look more carefully. By the time that happens, the combination effect has already been at work, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. This is not about blame. It is about understanding that the most significant medical risks are rarely loud or dramatic. They are quiet, they are cumulative, and they build in the spaces between what everyone assumed someone else was watching over. Everything we have covered today shares one common thread: the diuretic draining quietly, the ACE inhibitor shifting pressure invisibly, the NSAID restricting blood flow without announcement, the combination effect building beneath the surface over time. All of it unfolds in the same dimension, time. And time, when it comes to kidney decline, is the single variable that changes absolutely everything. Let me draw you a picture. A man in his early 70s, retired, reasonably active for his age, takes his medications every single morning without fail, because that is the kind of person he is. Responsible, consistent, doing exactly what his doctor asked of him and doing it well. His blood pressure is controlled, his energy is reasonable, his daily life is completely normal. Nothing hurts differently than usual. Nothing feels off. No alarm has sounded, because no alarm exists for what is happening inside his kidneys at this stage. Then one afternoon, during a routine checkup, not an emergency visit, not a crisis, His physician reviews a standard metabolic panel ordered more out of habit than concern, and there it is. A creatinine level slightly elevated compared to his result from 18 months ago, an eGFR, the measure of kidney filtration rate, that has quietly drifted downward, not catastrophically, not dramatically, but consistently in one direction, over time, while everything on the surface looked perfectly fine. Nobody caused this deliberately. Nobody missed an obvious warning sign. The timeline had simply been running, quietly, invisibly, patiently, while life continued as normal. This is not an unusual story. Research published in the Clinical Journal of the American Society of Nephrology found that gradual kidney function decline in older adults taking multiple cardiovascular medications frequently goes undetected for extended periods, precisely because the early changes fall just beneath the threshold that would trigger clinical concern. The numbers shift slowly enough that nobody acts until the shift has become significant. And here is what makes that timeline the most important part of everything discussed today. Kidney function, once lost, does not return. Unlike the liver, which has remarkable regenerative capacity, the kidney's microscopic filtration units, called nephrons, do not regrow. When they are lost, the remaining nephrons compensate. They work harder. They pick up the load. They do everything possible to maintain function, until there are simply too few left to compensate adequately. This is why catching this early matters more than almost anything else we've discussed. The difference between identifying this at an eGFR of 68 versus discovering it when it has dropped to 45 is not just a number on a laboratory chart. It is the difference between slowing a process with intervention and simply observing a process already advanced beyond the point of meaningful reversal. A study published in Nephrology Dialysis Transplantation confirmed that early detection of medication-related kidney stress before significant function has already been lost is associated with substantially better long-term outcomes. Substantially better, not marginally, substantially, which means the single most powerful action available to you right now has nothing to do with changing your medications. It has everything to do with knowing your numbers before the timeline gets any longer. So here we are, everything shared today. The diuretics, the pressure shifts, the hidden compounding risk that millions of older adults carry unknowingly, often for years. None of it was presented to push you toward fear or panic or distrust of your medical team. None of it was designed to make you second-guess every prescription you've been given or feel like you've been deceived. Quite the opposite. This was shared because one of the most consistently supported findings across decades of medical research is this: informed patients get better outcomes. Full stop, not slightly better outcomes. Meaningfully, measurably, substantially better outcomes. Because informed patients ask different questions. They show up to appointments with a different level of engagement. They notice things. They advocate for themselves. So let's talk about what being informed actually looks like from this day forward. The first and most immediate step is knowing two specific numbers: your creatinine level and your eGFR, glomerular filtration rate. These are standard values measured through a basic blood test that your doctor can order at any routine visit. Together, they give the clearest available picture of how well your kidneys are currently functioning. If you haven't had these checked within the last 12 months and you are over 60, managing blood pressure and taking any of the medications discussed today, that conversation with your physician needs to happen soon, not eventually, soon. The second step is complete medication transparency. Every over-the-counter pain reliever, every supplement, every occasional ibuprofen taken for a sore back or a flare-up in a troublesome joint. All of it needs to be on the table during your next medical appointment, because as everything today has made clear, the most significant risks don't come from prescriptions alone. They come from the full picture that nobody has yet assembled in a single room. The third step is hydration awareness, not obsession, awareness. If you are taking a diuretic, your fluid balance requires more conscious, deliberate attention than the average person your age. Research consistently shows that older adults underestimate their hydration needs, and even mild chronic dehydration amplifies every single risk discussed today. Drinking enough water is not a minor detail for someone in your situation. It is a meaningful act of kidney protection. And the fourth step, arguably the most important of all, is simply this: ask the question. At your very next appointment, look your physician in the eye and say, "Given everything I'm currently taking, when did we last check my kidney function specifically? And based on my situation, is it time to check again?" That one question, calm, direct, informed, is the difference between being a passive recipient of care and being an active participant in your own health. It signals to your doctor that you understand your situation at a deeper level. It opens a conversation that may not have happened otherwise, and it gives you information that could genuinely change your trajectory. Your kidneys have been working for you every single day of your life, without ever asking for a moment of your attention, without complaint, without rest. They have filtered your blood, balanced your chemistry, and kept you alive in ways you've never had to think about. This is your opportunity to finally return that favor, not with fear, not with panic, with awareness, with action, and with the kind of informed attention that changes outcomes before outcomes are forced to change on their own. Thank you for staying with this all the way through. Staying informed is one of the most powerful things you can do to live a longer, healthier, more independent life. If you want more honest, practical health guidance built for adults over 60, make sure you subscribe and tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a comment and rate this content from 1 to 10. Your feedback genuinely helps me create better guidance for the people who need it most.